Do you wonder why Irish people are more sympathetic toward Palestine and more hostile toward Israel than most other Western Europeans? That's worth looking at, so I'm going to bring you along with me in Dublin and try to explain the Irish point of view. You're going to see not just university students and 20-somethings, but elderly pensioners, young families, working class and middle, a real cross-section of society joining each other. You'll see more kufias per capita than probably any other European city. You'll hear Irish language chants and songs and old Republican slogans. Now, the audio and video will be disjointed because I have to cut the video constantly whenever children's faces appear, but I don't always want to cut the audio, so I'm mixing and matching as I see fit. You know I'm a lost cause with the camera in any case, so be warned, production values are scandalously low here, although the conversation will make it all worthwhile. Notice that the police, or guards, are here to escort us, not control or intimidate or discipline us as they would in most cities. They'll be making sure that trams and motor traffic have stopped and that no one obstructs or tries to provoke us. It's understood that we have the right of way. The city of Dublin has been great. We take various routes on different occasions, and they're always supportive. Incidentally, Dublin entered into a friendship agreement with the occupied West Bank city of Ramallah after the October 7th attacks, seemingly in reply to Israel's extravagant violence. So, major props to the Gardaí and the city of Dublin. We're grateful for their service. These women are mourning the indiscriminate mass slaughter of Palestinian children. The song is from 2003. It's in Irish. In the description, I'll put a link to a professional rendition of the entire piece. But ask yourself, why would there be a popular protest song in Irish about Palestine 20 years ago? Because the connection is real and it's deep. We didn't just discover Gaza last October. We've been down with the Palestinians for a long time. I'll stop talking now. Let's just listen together.
Phalaistín, Phalaistín. 5, 6, 7, 8. Israel is a terrorist state. Phalaistín, Phalaistín, Phalaistín. 1, 2, 3, 4. Occupation no more. Phalaistín. 5, 6, 7, 8. Israel is a terrorist state.
This song is 19th century Irish with several versions. This is a Republican revision with lyrics by Padraig Pearse. I'll link to a professional rendition by the late Sinead O'Connor. And no, I can't tell you if it borrows from the shanty Drunken Sailor or vice versa. Let's focus on this banner. I think it says everything, though very quietly. First, you should understand that it expresses what is considered a legitimate point of view in Ireland: victory to the Palestinian resistance. The Palestinian resistance is, of course, Hamas, which has been designated a terrorist organization by the United States and the European Union, although not by the United Nations Security Council Committee. Terrorist designations are rarely unanimous. This banner reminds us, gently, that there is a significant chunk of Irish society who would like to see Hamas defeat the IDF. Many of us regard the current Israeli government as a toxic apartheid regime that has forfeited its legitimacy through a comprehensive program of ethnic cleansing on a Cromwellian scale. So this will be our springboard into today's lecture. Lots of Irish disagree with mainstream definitions and claims regarding terrorism and armed conflict in general. Now, as I said, the European Union, under the de facto leadership of Schlachthof-Scholz and Frau Genocide, has designated Hamas a terrorist organization. So, as EU members, we don't come right out and say we're rooting for Hamas. This is meant to keep EU pressure off of our national government because they would immediately buckle to the first hint of pushback, and that could cause problems for us. But many Irish people see Hamas the same way we see other designated terrorist outfits. The African National Congress, or ANC, with Nelson Mandela, or certain, how shall I put it, sane factions of the IRA. That is, many see Hamas as a Palestinian militia that's resisting foreign occupation and ethnic cleansing, as one must. Terrorist designations have never been absolute. No one gets the last word. A terrorist outfit is any group of irregulars that the world's major powers fear and despise. The official membership roles are highly fluid. Mandela went from terrorist demon to secular saint because the people and institutions running things wanted it that way. Apartheid was fine until it wasn't. A resistance group might be classified as banned by some countries or institutions and as terrorists by others. Some might be shifted from one category to the other as political conditions change. There's nothing permanent or absolute about any terrorist designation. It's fundamentally a matter of opinion influenced by political and practical considerations, which can be as trivial as some pipsqueak state currying favor with one of the whales. The Houthi movement in Yemen is a recent example. It was classified as terrorist by the Trump administration, no doubt under Saudi pressure or bribery, and immediately delisted by Joe Biden. Although now he's put them back on the list because they made Bibi Netanyahu cry. The Irish view is less judgmental. You could argue that Hamas and several other resistance groups are terrorist organizations based on their numerous surprise attacks against civilian targets in the past, and we would recognize that as a valid belief. But you could also call them a legitimate guerrilla resistance organization that has committed terrorist acts which don't define it. The ANC springs immediately to mind. Nearly everyone here would agree that, in the absence of a realistic diplomatic solution, armed resistance to foreign occupation is more than the absolute right of every people. It's a moral duty. This is echoed, not quite so strongly, in the 1970 United Nations General Assembly Resolution number 2625 on national self-determination. Link in the description. Most countries acknowledge it, at least perfunctorily, more often opportunistically, but the Irish have experienced the wrong end of foreign occupation, so we take this idea of an inherent collective human right to resist quite seriously. Remember, the island of Ireland is still, to this day, occupied by a foreign power. I call it polite occupation because we've kind of given consent. But we didn't abandon our territorial claim until 1998. We've got a fig leaf to conceal the reality, called the Good Friday Agreement, and most of us are okay with it. And it's okay for us to be okay with it. We're not obliged to hate the situation. The agreement worked nicely while Britain was in the EU. We had unqualified freedom of movement in all directions for people, goods, and services, so occupation was a mere technical fact. It didn't matter. Ireland's and Britain's EU membership made the Good Friday Agreement a functioning, practical solution that put a welcomed halt to decades of paranoia, spiteful conflict, and cruel violence. But now, thanks to Brexit, the agreement is broken, although no one is willing to talk about it yet. But we're going to have a conversation about it soon. I think it's important. No shamrocks for Genocide Joe. Well, he did get them in any case, courtesy of our spineless PM, Leo Varadkar. There's a tradition of the Irish PM offering a bowl of shamrocks to the American president on St. Patrick's Day. A lot of Irish people feel that it was inappropriate this year, given the U.S. government's crucial support for the mass atrocities in Gaza, but our Leo just couldn't help himself. Gaza notwithstanding, I have always hated this annual gesture, the Irish PM assuming a clearly submissive position, offering a begging bowl full of weeds to his master. It's an insult to Ireland, and it disgusts me. Of course, being the opportunist he is, Varadkar would offer a bowl of shamrocks to Oliver Cromwell in exchange for a pat on the head and a little scratching behind the ears. I believe that our national government would sell out Palestine in a heartbeat if they thought they could get away with it at the ballot box. But they know they would pay a high price, so they talk out of both sides of their mouths. The self-serving weasels in Leinster House tremble at the thought of displeasing their American corporate overlords, and so pitch in quietly behind the scenes despite the firm condemnation of the Irish people whose interests they no longer even pretend to serve. Honestly, I think Leo Varadkar, Micheál Martin, and Eamon Ryan would dip the bullets in pork fat themselves if Tim Cook ordered them to. So don't mistake Irish government noise, or the noise of our so-called free press, or the ridiculous government gazette RTE for genuine Irish beliefs. They don't speak for us, and I sense we're going to punish them severely in the next election. But I'll talk more about that in a separate video. Regular Irish folks know a massacre when they see one. We've been through enough of those over the centuries, so we know better than to call this sadistic onslaught the Israel-Hamas war or the Israel-Hamas conflict. That's Israeli propaganda that a lot of media outlets have been bullied into adopting, much to their shame. That phrase reflects extensive Zionist grooming of media execs, producers, and editors, and it is a criminally fraudulent expression. And as such, it's also remarkably economical. 2 stinking lies in only 3 words. First lie, war. This is not a war. It's a siege in furtherance of ethnic cleansing. Simple as that. Second lie, Hamas. The violence is not against Hamas. They're the decoys Israel is pointing at. The violence is against all residents of Gaza. It's not terrorist cleansing, it's ethnic cleansing. Calling it the Israel-Hamas war or the Israel-Hamas conflict is a way of airbrushing out the true victims in their multitudes, just as we ourselves, in our starving, dislocated, traumatized millions, were airbrushed out of the story of the Cromwellian conquest. Speaking of which, if you were an Irish person around 1650 or so, you would know exactly what it is to be a Palestinian trapped in Gaza today. You would be convinced that the Earth's entire human population hates you. There's no other way to understand the world's refusal even to curb Israel's fanatical violence. The Western world is impotent. And not just governments and media. Supposedly moral institutions like churches and charities are paralyzed. Oh, they'll try to excuse themselves by saying they shouldn't be involved in politics, but that is rubbish. This isn't politics. This is morality, the very business where they pretend to have authority. The only obviously religious people I've seen openly condemning Israel have been Jews. Surely our Christian and Muslim religious leaders can find the courage to walk beside them in an ecumenical spirit. The Irish Church's paralysis and silence on Gaza is just one more in a long succession of everlasting disgraces with which it has soiled itself. Not that anyone should be surprised.
Hey, Gaza, sir! It's Palestine, Hey, Gaza, sir! It's Palestine,
The irrational fear of being called anti-Semitic has triumphed over the will of whole societies to act morally or even speak morally. The global epidemic of Zionist grooming has been so diabolically effective that the world is now comfortable bearing witness to pure evil. Irish people know this. How many times have we experienced it? Cromwell, the Acts of Union, the penal laws, more Acts of Union, the Great Hunger, the Troubles, all of it forced on us by Britain, and all of it ignored by the civilized world. We know how it feels when the only reply to your cries of anguish is the sound of your own voice echoing, or a sniper's gunshot. So that's the Irish take on things. As for my own personal beliefs, I'm not shy. I'm happy to piss everyone off. Let me start by saying that I wish Hamas had struck military targets exclusively on October 7th, 2023. By attacking civilians and taking civilian hostages, Hamas committed war crimes and acts of terrorism. I think they would enjoy broader support internationally had they attacked only uniformed IDF personnel and IDF material assets. But I'm not surprised that they answered decades of relentless Israeli provocation with violence. Palestinians are victims of apartheid. They're unable to travel freely, or study, or work, or live where they please. They're monitored relentlessly, detained arbitrarily, and disqualified from most opportunities to improve their lives. The unremitting pressure and humiliation that Israel exerts on Palestinians was guaranteed to draw a violent reply driven by rage. Now, don't get me wrong, I am peace-loving, although obviously not a pacifist. Certainly, a just peace is always preferable to violence. But no justice, no peace. Peace without justice is domination and subjugation, and in that case, you've got to take off the gloves. I'll put it like this. I detest bullfighting, but not because it's violent. I loathe it because the game is rigged so that the bull hasn't got a fighting chance. If matadors left the ring in body bags as often as bulls, I could totally respect that. I despise bullies and cowards, is what I'm saying. Coming up soon, I'll be talking about the Good Friday Agreement and how the Brits have screwed us yet again because Brexit really has destroyed it, although everyone continues pretending otherwise. And I must talk about this business of Ireland being full, of being overwhelmed by immigrants and refugees. I bet a lot of people have been wondering about that. The world's most fertile producer of refugees complaining about refugees? What's up with that? I think I can explain. I'll be in Belfast during the Easter break, and I'll try to bring back some decent footage and an update on matters Irish and Palestinian from the northern perspective. And you know my mouth, so if you don't hear from me for a while, it probably means I got nicked. And of course there will be the usual coffee content, but my coffee videos are typically high effort with lots of testing behind the scenes, so very time consuming. There are plenty of coffee videos that could be, tweets, but that's not the Wired Gourmet. Around here, we put in our most sincere efforts. But don't worry, there will not be fewer coffee videos. There will simply be more content on various other topics. So keep in touch. Saoirse on Phalaistín.
Oh, Joe Biden had a party, genocidal Joe. And to that party he invited anyone who'd go. Martin was there for Edgar too. Eamon ran on Mary Lou, bringing shame on me and you with genocidal Joe.
I love that. Wow! Yes!